All right. Student success team, I'm going to turn it over to Larissa to get us started. The Q&A is open. We're ready.
Good morning or good afternoon, I guess, just freshly afternoon right now. I hope everybody's doing well. My name is Larissa Chuka. I am the Director of University Advising, and I'm happy to join you today to share some great information to get your students off on the right foot, hopefully answer any questions that you may have. I'm joined today by my team members, and Brian Williams, no relation. If they want to just unmute and introduce themselves. Our fearless friend, Brian Williams, is actually traveling today, so you might notice that he is in an airport, but he didn't want to miss out speaking to you today, so he's joining us from an airport. What a trooper. Natasha?
Hello, everyone. I'm Natasha Williams. I am the Assistant Director of Academic Intervention on the Student Success Team in the Office of the Provost. Welcome.
And Brian.
And hi, everybody. Hopefully, you can hear me okay. But as Louisa said, I am in the airport right now for a 4 hour layover in Baltimore. So if I break any out, I apologize about that. But my name is Brian Williams. I'm the Associate Director for Student Success Scholar Programs. I'm here at the University of Pittsburgh. Nice to meet everybody.
Excellent. And as an overview, we are part of a much broader student success team here at the university. As you can see on the screen, those beautiful smiling faces of our colleagues who work both front of house and back of house to support student success. Some of us are working directly out of the Student Success Hub, which is in our Langley Hall building, and your students will learn all about that multiple times during their welcome week and orientation. But these are the folks who also run things behind the scenes with supporting academic advisors, mentors, our student success technology, one of which you'll hear about here in a few minutes. And so starting off today, I kind of wanted to explain how we're going to break down the presentation. First half of the presentation is going to be very logistical. These are hands-on, tactile, oftentimes websites and apps that we just want to make sure that you as families supporting your student know about, but that also you put it down on a list, maybe sit side by side when you watch the recording of this later with your students and say, okay, ahead of start you setting foot on campus, we need to make sure that you know what these are, that you've downloaded these apps to your phone, that you've bookmarked them on your computers and browsers. Then the second half is going to be a little bit more of the academic coaching, if you will, talking about some good practices, some good habits, some good behaviors. And so jumping right in, Ms. Natasha is going to share about the first resource we want you to know about.
Yes, hello everyone. So the first one is Experience at Pitt. Welcome Week will be coming up within the next month or two. So if you want to download the Experience app of Pitt, what's going to happen is it's going to give you a whole overview of what's taking place during Welcome Week, activities, breaks, anything that's going on, any webinars, workshops, things of that nature is going to be on there. This is a really good app just to download for that Welcome Week. It is going to show you all the community experiences and things that are taking place that week.
So really, really important to have. Parents are allowed to use a version of it, and there's a version of it also online that you can utilize. Next is Navigate 360. Navigate 360 is really going to be one of the most important handheld tools outside of High Point CX that we're going to talk to you about because it allows students from the palm of their hand, literally, to make an appointment with one of their most important people to begin with at the start of a semester, one of their most important cheerleaders, but also helpers, which is their academic advisors and student success team. You can do appointment scheduling through the app. It actually gives you some really nice real-time and easy user experiences ways to look at to-do lists that they may have to do. You can send messages to those individuals. You can view any holds that may be preventing activity. That's one thing to know is that there are preventative holds, and if they're not resolved, they could interfere potentially with students making adjustments to their schedule. And so just knowing how to contact and get access to those academic advisor and student success folks early on in the semester, really, really important. So you'll want to have this one down packed. One of the features also on here that they can look at is when we around weeks 4 to 6, we have an open early progress reporting scheduled, which is when faculty are asked to give feedback to students very early on, because the earlier that we have this feedback, the the sooner we can make adjustments and have more runway on how they're doing in class. And so if you're asking your family members, how are you doing in class? They should have feedback during weeks 4 to 6, and that is an opportunity for them to take actionable steps, reach out to their support folks if they need to, but it's also an opportunity to get a really early kudos if they're doing well in that class and know exactly where they stand moving forward. That feedback is very, very important early on. Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Larissa. So, next thing is it's going to be for High Point CX. This is going to be a great way that students can check their class schedule. They can search for courses, add and drop classes, check for any kind of holds that you may have on your account. There's several different holds that may prevent a student from registering for classes. That could be a financial hold, a collections hold, that could be a regular academic advising hold. So there's a number of holds. So you get to check those holds and know what they are just so you can get that proper support for those. You can also view your grades there. Something that we also do here at Pitt is an opportunity for students to kind of get an early progress check-in or note where they can know what they're doing or how they're doing at the, around the midpoint of the semester, just so that if they need to make any adjustments, they can do so from there. You'll also get your academic advisement report. This is very important just because it helps students and it helps you, for that matter, know what classes are needed in order to graduate. So it breaks it down to the number of credits that you still need and certain classes, specific classes that you may need to complete your major or to complete your Gen Ed requirements while you're here at Pitt. And it's also access to planners. It's a great opportunity for students to say, hey, you know what? In the spring, I know I'm gonna have a job from 2 to 4 or from 12 to 4, or in the morning. And with this planner, you can also set up and schedule your classes around those parameters as well. So it's a great tool for students to use. So I definitely recommend that students get familiar with that and know how to use that right away.
And they'll have continued opportunities to work with their academic advisors to use that throughout each semester here when the enrollment period's open. And we've got Canvas, Brian.
Yes, so Canvas is a great tool as well. I'm not sure of how many of your students have used Canvas or some shape or form of it. I know there's Blackboard, there's a number of different educational platforms that students can use, but what this does is it gives them access to their classes. Some professors use it a little bit more thoroughly than others, but it's a great tool just to be able to go into your class. You should typically be able to view the syllabus, any assignments that are due. Some professors have assignments that are due in Canvas. It's also a great way to connect with your professor on there too. I set up appointments and things like that. So I think overall Canvas is a great tool just because a lot of professors also use it as a way to checking if students are engaged and participating within the class as well with class discussions and things like that. There's sometimes articles and things like that for students to read there. So again, just like with the High Point, this is going to be a very important app for students to use just to have access to their classes and all the various things they may need within their classes.
Excellent. Natasha.
Yes, so the next tool that we would like to really speak to students and their parents about is Microsoft Outlook. Microsoft Outlook is going to be one of the go-to things that the students should definitely download. These are emails, and I'm going to tell you and stress that students are going to receive a lot of emails. And we want to make sure that they're scanning all emails because some are going to be more important than others, and we understand that. But if they download them and they're definitely checking them, they won't miss anything. We always tell students, like, once they get the hang of things, they can start to discontinue some of them for the things such as like signing up for different clubs or experiences and things of that nature. However, there are some that students definitely want to pay attention to, and I can't stress this enough. Anything coming out of the office of the provost, right? You don't want to delete. You want to make sure that you're reading these thoroughly. Financial aid office, student accounts, student affairs, things of that nature that you're going to get really high impact emails. Some instructors might email you about certain things in regards to assignments, or you're missing something, or we might have like a study group or something like that. But you definitely want to make sure that your student And also students that are on the call, check your emails multiple times a day. It's really, 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 really important. In addition to that, time management goes hand in hand with the calendar and your scheduling. When we're speaking about time management, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, you could also put everything on your calendar. That way, students can look at it at the palm of their hands to see exactly what classes are needed. What time are they doing? If they're signing up for group work assignments and or work assignments, things of that nature. I know a lot of students put everything in their phone. This is a good way to emphasize time management and just have all their things in one place. You can also have a to-do list. So if they know that they have assignments coming up, they can have a task tracking, right? A to-do list, and then they're able to check that off. Once again, it's right in the palm of your hand. All of this can be downloaded on your phone. They can have this on their iPads. They can have it on their laptop. Um, Another great feature to have within these tools is going to be Zoom and Teams. A lot of times they'll have Zoom meetings, they'll have team meetings. You're able to take this on your phone. You're able to also have it right on your iPads and also iPads and also your tablets as well, right? It's a one-stop shop, but also file access. You're able to save your documents. If you're working on a group project, it's easy and accessible for students to share work at, on time. So if they're checking different things, proofreading different things, every time you save something, it's up to date. This is going to include Word, Excel, PowerPoint presentations, but it's a really, really good tool to utilize to have from freshman year all the way up to your senior year.
And these are all free for our students. And so once the
Absolutely.
students have activated their accounts, they can go to my.pitt.edu, which is where you can search for most of these things as noted in this top right corner, as well as their apps. And so they're free, no cost to the student, the online versions of them, as well as the apps. You just have to make sure that you're using your Pitt email, the @pitt.edu email to sign up. And then there will be a single sign-on function just to make sure that we're following security protocols there. Speaking of safety, this is a really, really important one that I always like to bring up. I bring it up to employees, students, parents, families, any chance I get because I am a user of it myself. This is the Rave Guardian app. Again, free to students. You can go to that website that's at the bottom, which is the safety.pitt.edu. And there's several resources available there. Parents oftentimes, I don't think I've gone to an event where parents and families have been when the topic of safety has not come up, and I really appreciate that because it's important to acknowledge that we do live in a city, but that we have great safety features available, and our public safety, our University of Pittsburgh Police are great partners and always present on campus. This app will allow your students to set up a profile. There's different settings that you can use and toggle. I personally have my locate me on and share my GPS with this one in particular. Should I ever be in the position that I need to use the app, I am able to, I put a photo of myself in there so I'm easily identifiable if somebody needs to find me. But there's also some features on there that will allow you to send a tip or call things immediately. Again, I've never personally had to use these, knock on wood, but it does allow you to have that safety at your fingertips. And so depending on how much information you put in it and how you set up your permissions, it'll have different utility to get connected to those resources. Similarly, a question we often get from parents and families is, how do I know what's going on campus? We transparently share emergency notification service alerts. You just have to sign up and register your phone number. Parents and families can sign up and register those as well as part of a broader Clery Act that we transparently share what's going on, and you can adjust your settings accordingly. This is really important in case we have something where there's a road, a water main bursts is one of the last times I remember seeing something about this, and the road was particularly inaccessible and also very, very damp. We could not get through. We send notifications to folks either by text or voicemail. I have both set up because I'm afraid I'll ignore a text message, but I will answer a call if I see that it's ENS. And it just tells you avoid this road, water main break, and then they'll send a follow-up with an all clear, like, oh, it's been managed, you now know how to do. So it's not just for safety reasons, but also for accessibility reasons throughout campus. So now we're going to transition into some of those more tips and tools, a little less tactile than an application or a website, but still really important to talk about some behaviors, some habits around truthfully being successful during their first year at Pitt and throughout as new incoming students. Brian.
Sorry about that. I was trying to find the unmute button. But yeah, just like Larissa was saying, it is going to be important to develop good habits. Develop and keep good habits, as the slide says here. Just because there's a big difference between high school and college. You know, all these students are here at Pitt because they're meant to be at Pitt. But that doesn't mean to say that you know, college rigor is a lot different than high school rigor. You know, so you know, what do you have that was good habits that helped you? You know, what habits at home and school do you need to work on? You know, so just being honest about those things. I know one of the major things in you know, in college is that students just think they don't have enough time to study. But sometimes what I do is I say, hey, let's look at the times that you have in between classes, because it's not going to be like high school where you go from 7:30 to 2:30, 3 o'clock. And then from there you have from 8 until, from 3 until 10 o'clock for yourself to study. Sometimes you may have a class at 8 and not have another class until 12. Sometimes you may have a class, you know, that goes all day and you just have a pocket of time in the evening. So it's going to be important to try to find those pockets of time to study and really take good care of yourself. So you know, as the middle slide says here, you know, eating right, you know, setting yourself a schedule. Uh, you know, um, you know, I think it says here active learning. So learning how to do that, consistent exam preparation. I know that a big thing. A lot of students here are doing pre-med or sometimes something in the sciences. So you know, studying constantly and things like that are going to be good for you. You know, so going to tutoring hours, meeting with the study partner, so those things are going to be very helpful to you. So obviously, on the other side of it is that those poor habits are going to help you or going to disadvantage you as well. So, having a poor diet, not sleeping well, reading things over and over again. You know, sometimes, and I'm like this too. I read the same thing over and over again, and I look back at it. It's like I have no idea what I read, and that's my signal right there that I need to take a break, go do something else to occupy my time, and maybe come back to it. I tell students that too. There's no such thing as sitting down and studying for 4 hours straight. Know your body, know yourself. You know, if you can only concentrate for 45 minutes, which is the realm that I'm in, I know that hey, 45 minutes is my max. I set an alarm for that. And then I say, hey, you know what? You have 15 minutes to go do whatever else you want to do. But in 15 minutes, you have to come back and get started again. So doing these things consistently and not procrastinating. You know, one of the big downfalls of a lot of students is like, hey, you know what? I have this exam on Friday. I won't start opening up my book until Wednesday. That is, it's a recipe for failure there, because what you want to do is you're getting a lot of information in these classes. So, a lot of the times you're getting a month's full of work, maybe in a week. So what you want to do is you want to do bite-sized chunks. Again, looking at that schedule, taking those bite-sized chunks when you're studying. And then when you're 2 or 3 days out from the exam, then you can start going back and saying, hey, let me read through all this material. Let me find out the things that I'm really strong on, or those things that I may need some extra support with a tutor or office hours with my professors. So those things they'll help you with that preparation too. And just really taking care of yourself, not that I'm encouraging everybody to go out there and exercise, but all those things that go at the top of this chain will help you with your overall health too. So eating correctly, sleeping, having yourself a good schedule. These are those pillars for healthy habits. And when you're healthy, you're going to thrive. When you're not healthy or you're struggling, you kind of have to take a step back and kind of look at the things that you're doing, that are within your locus of control that you can change. And, with our team, we can help students out with trying to figure out those habits that help them.
Absolutely. And we intentionally title this page Honest Reflection because this is something that we encourage parents and families to have these conversations with the students, right? We acknowledge that a lot of students have shared with us that in their last year or maybe semester, this is not for everyone, but that maybe there was some senioritis happening there. And they've earned that, right? They worked really hard for 4+ years, and so they maybe had a lighter schedule. But really reflecting on, I haven't studented hard in a little bit, and making sure that you kind of go back and you revisit study habits, revisit gaps that you may have and opportunities for growth. The time to figure that out and have those conversations is now, not 2 weeks into the semester amidst maybe like some queuing of some stressors and things like that. So starting to have a plan ahead of time is really, really a great opportunity to have a conversation. Along those lines, keeping consistent with things that did work in high school. There, of course, in my next slide, I'll cover kind of some of the differences between high school classes versus college classes and the levels of accountability and how they change. But it's really, really important to have a conversation ahead of time regarding some of the things you're seeing on the screen. We hear oftentimes we just had a Panther Connect that our host Summer hosted for families to come visit on campus. Would they have been able to? And lots of people asked us about this, which I was so happy to hear, because you want to start setting these up early. But parents will walk up and say, my student had an IEP in high school, or a 501 or a 301 plan, or exchange number for your state that's being used to indicate that they receive some support services or accommodations. There's a process for that with our disabilities resource services. If this sounds familiar to you and you have not just reached out to them, I encourage you to open a screen and search for Pitt DRS, and it will walk you through the process for signing up. But one of the things that we hear, and it makes us sad on the inside, to be honest, when students say, well, I had this for my entire pre-collegiate academic experience, but I'm going to try it without for college. I have never, in the 25, depending on how you count years that I've worked in higher education, heard somebody say that and that work out well. And so making sure that you still have scaffoldings that assured prior success and access for you ahead of time. And so just making sure that you have an honest conversation about these are designed to support you, and that having that consistent scaffolding is going to help you. Similarly, I talk about support resources and your support network in the same vein, right? If you're on medications or having certain treatments, planning ahead to stay consistent with those, finding local providers, if it's not something that can be managed during through our student health resources. We have a pharmacy on campus as well. We have counselors on campus as well. But if it's something that you want to continue with your mental health providers or counselors, or your out-of-state insurance, doing a little bit of digging ahead of time and making sure you have a transition plan set for when you land on campus and what you're doing there. Thankfully, in the mental health counseling space, we've moved to Zoom in a lot of cases, so not breaking the continuity, I think, really does help students with that transition. But sometimes there's room for a warm handoff for somebody who's a local provider potentially. And so doing a little bit of research with your insurance, doing a little bit of research with our counseling center on campus or our student health services on campus, and making sure to stay consistent. And having the pharmacy on campus is really great because you can transition those scripts now. It'll just be ready for them at the corner of Pitt and University Place, right there, central campus. And one of the benefits also of having Pitt, the size of Pitt behind it, is that oftentimes when there's shortages for certain types of medications nationally, Pitt has not really experienced that because they order ahead and accordingly knowing our populations and typically what is needed. And then Brian touched on this a little bit, making sure to stay up on self-care and your support networks. If part of your normal day-to-day is connecting with friends, worshiping in faith, going into community, this day and age, we have the ability to still stay connected in lots of ways to those groups. So not just completely cutting yourself away from those supports, but really embracing them and having a plan for, I'm going to maybe log online to see the service, or I'm going to find a community service nearby that it really does, and have a conversation about that. We get lots of calls at the beginning of the semester. My son or daughter isn't answering my texts. I'm concerned. And it's not a safety concern. It's more so they get so busy and they're doing all of the activities and they're maybe not even paying attention to their phones. What a thing. And so talking about that, like, hey, John, Sarah, I expect you to at least text me once per insert so that I'm not worrying and calling all the offices and so that we're okay. And so kind of establishing early on what are those agreements that you're going to have for when they're checking in, what are they doing? And then while kind of maintaining those things that are the things that worked in high school or prior to their time coming to college, staying open to new experiences and opportunities, not cutting themselves off. And when they get here on campus for Welcome Week, there will be a lot of that. So also, not oversaturating and losing sight of things like sleep, hydration, eating, staying consistent with those good things that worked. More specifically speaking about some differences between high school and college, I wanted to put out some common examples that we see that we want to draw attention to, and we bring this up with parents and families. So there's this expectation setting also of, what are we going to do in these scenarios? What's the game plan if I encounter difficulty? But also to not shield them from the fact that there is quite a big difference in how things run per se. So for instance, in high school, it's the subjects, you have 36 weeks, right? So even if you're not doing so like you're behind, you have a longer runway potentially to get caught up on things because it's across 36 weeks. The subjects that you'll be students will be learning about and also being assessed upon are now condensed into two separate 15 weeks if they're doing the standard fall and spring. Sometimes students choose to do summer classes. So that's a very, very condensed period for processing hours in classroom times. Generally, we've heard from students class averages are sizes, like physical in the classroom spaces, are closer to 35, maybe 50. Class number of students could be 100 students or more, depending on the subject. You get into those first year general education courses or bio at a university that like the University of Pittsburgh, those class sizes can be bigger. They tend to get smaller as you move along in your subject matter from, your first year, second year, third year, and so on, because it's more specialized. But that might be something that's daunting to a first-time student. My classroom size when I transitioned from high school to college, I went from having 20 people maximum, and my first lecture was 400 people. And that was a little bit different. And so just kind of knowing what to expect, knowing even just the etiquette around, I've got to get there at least 5 minutes early, or, I'm going to definitely not get my seat in the front that I need to see the board better, things like that, right? So how to navigate a slightly larger system. In high school, students may have had study periods where even just during the regular day, they had time to complete assignments. Maybe there wasn't as much homework because they were doing things between breaks at lunchtime. They had activities in the evenings, things like that. It maybe would be a little bit easier to do some last minute things because of just the sheer size of assignments maybe weren't as large. In college, the average estimate that they say to use to kind of negotiate and plan out time management is for every hour in class to expect anywhere from 2 to 3 hours outside of the classroom, depending on the subject. For STEM classes or computational classes, things that are more technical or quantification in nature, that number is probably going to be closer to the 3 to 4 hours outside of the classroom for in classroom. And so thinking about that class schedule that your students have built with their advisor, they're in High Point CX that we spoke about earlier, they have the ability to see a weekly view. It's going to look like it has a lot of free time right now, right? It's not your traditional 8 to 3 or whatever the high school timeline was. It's going to have blocks. How are students strategically planning to use those blocks of free time to fit in these 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 hours outside of class to truly negotiate their schedule and then still allow room for some of the fun stuff, right? It's a rite of passage that you've got to play spike ball or volleyball on the cathedral lawn. So making space for that, or insert. Maybe they want to be part of the Quidditch team, which is also a really great opportunity. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, please Google that. It is fantastic. You seldom you may not have had to read as much outside of class because maybe you were reading within class. So just the quantity, this one I've learned more and more is not true anymore because of how things are changing in high school. There may be more short assessments versus might be assigned to read multiple chapters and then come back to the next class and do an in-class writing about it or write a multiple page paper. And so kind of just thinking about those contrasts, being prepared for them and how you're going to support your students to shift into that mentality, particularly around building their schedules. And the next thing that Natasha is going to talk about is going to really be a crucial tool in starting to think about that schedule building.
Yes, hello everyone again. So the course syllabi, this is one of the most important documents that the professors are going to provide for your young adults. And what happens is sometimes they will post this, as Brian stated before, in our Canvas site, and or they'll, give them out within their website, or some instructors might still print them out, sometimes, but students should definitely have a hard copy, in my opinion. Keep one that you have online, but also print one out because this is going to tell you everything you need to know about that course. It's going to show you the professor's name. It's going to show you their email address. It's going to show you office hours, which is one of the most important things as well, where professors are available for students with open hours to come in and ask questions. TAs, you're able to ask them questions in case you just have, some reservations about test taking or what should I really be studying, or I was studying this way, but I failed that one test, right? So open hours are going to be very important for students to make sure that they track. This is one of the things that's going to be right on your syllabi. In addition to that, it's going to break down some time management in regards to what's happening in week one, what's taking place in week two, right? What assignments are due, and things of that nature. So students want to make sure that they are scanning, reading thoroughly their syllabus. They want to make sure that they understand what's going on in the syllabus. They want to make sure that they are tracking the assignments. Grading policies is very important as well, right? They want to make sure that they are not, what is the word? Depending on the courses, like if you're taking a writing class, you want to make sure that you're not plagiarizing different things of that nature. So you want to make sure that the expectations are there, right? Grading policies and everything is listed in the syllabi. And typically, sometimes professors will give students a heads up in regards to the Canvas sites. They may post them a couple days prior to class, right? Because sometimes there's assignments due, right? At that one, that first class. So you want to make sure that they are scanning, really knowing exactly what the expectations are, putting the assignments, the testing, group projects, anything of that nature on their calendar, right? So you want to make sure that they are taking this really, really seriously and making sure that they know what the expectations are.
And I know this says med schools. I've kept this because I think it's a great image as a source, recognizing not everybody's going into med school. But I also know that our incoming class has several people that are interested in the biological and health sciences. So it's a good rule of thumb for first year students. Natasha.
Yep. So what we definitely want to show you is how to show up ready, right? Be prepared. One of the things is you definitely want to make sure that syllabi that I just spoke about, that you're scanning that, you're really honing into knowing what the expectations are. But another thing is make sure students, you are attending class. Don't think because some instructors will not take attendance that they don't know that you're there. It will show up with assignments. It will show up if you have too many questions, things of that nature. You want to make sure you're ready, attend every class. If there is an issue, say for instance, we have a lot of students that may get sick, COVID is still around, little bugs are still around. Communicate with your professors, please. Email them, let them know what is taking place, right? Two, you want to make sure that you're reviewing information prior to going, right? Your lectures, you want to make sure that you're taking notes thoroughly, right? Three, you want to make sure that you put in setting aside time for study every day. Larissa went over the hours, right? If you're taking a class that has 3 credits, you need to be studying this time, right? But you also want to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success. So you don't want to bog yourself down with study, 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 but then you're not retaining things. Once again, we are the team. If you need assistance with time management, we'll talk to you about that a little later in this presentation about how you can work with us as academic coaches to make sure that your time management skills are up to par. And finally, you want to make sure that what you're putting out there is making sure that those study tools are there. I know for a lot of students coming in, they are under the Dietrich School, so we do have like study lab. We have individuals such as ourselves that are academic coaches that we're here to help you. So if you do need assistance, you're not alone. I always tell students, ask for help. Don't think that any question is like, well, I should know this because I'm going to college. No, you don't need to know everything. We don't know everything. So come to us, seek help, ask questions, right? So a couple of things that I just want to reinsinuate is, understand the course structure, understand the materials, make sure that you're reading, understanding what the assignments are, make sure you review everything consistently. Ask questions if you have questions, right? You have a professor. Some classes will have TAs. TAs are teaching assistants. So they're students that are a little bit higher level than freshman students that are there to assist students. You want to make sure that you're participating, and most importantly, make sure that you communicate with your professors. They are not going to know if you're struggling. They're not going to know if you're sitting there just taking notes and you're not taking the right notes, right? If it's not consistent, if the first test you didn't do so well, you want to make sure that you're communicating with them. You want to make sure that you're going to office hours, but most importantly, seek help, ask questions, and there's also tutoring for pretty much every subject that we have on campus. Once again, we're gonna, establish a reliable system of time management. Time management is very important. For all three of us, I could speak for Larissa, I could speak for Brian, and also myself. We have a lot of times where students are like, I'm really good at time management, and they come to college and they're like, I'm overwhelmed, right? I need some assistance. I'm studying and I can't retain the information. How can I, set myself up for success? So we want to make sure that students are studying what they need to study. They're managing their time properly. So they have to, in my opinion, think about what Larissa said in previous slides. What worked in high school, right? What didn't work in high school. I see a lot of times students will come to me and they're like, I studied for 2 hours, Miss Natasha, right? But I'm not retaining anything and I bombed that test. And I'm like, well, how did you study? And they're like, well, I was reading things and then my phone went off. So then I went to go pick up my phone, or my roommate is, talking with other students and things of that nature. So there's some things that you may have to do a little differently. Like, set those alarms to say, hey, I'm not going to study for 2 hours, but I'm going to study for 45 minutes. Give myself a break. Get up, right? Post-its. Are you good with post-its? Things of that nature. Calendar reminders, things of that nature. Do you work really well in a group, or do you work really work well alone? So some of those things are some things that the students are going to have to really figure out for themselves. There's a lot of study labs on campus that they could request to use if they need just that quiet spot. At the Student Success Hub, we have some rooms that they could rent out. There's different study rooms in the library and all across the campus, right? Or do they need study groups, right? We could show them how to network with some of the students and their peers within their classrooms to establish that, right? But some things to just do, prior. Things to start to think about in regards to time management. Once again, we will work with the students. We also have in a Dietrich School, the study lab that will work with students in regards to time management as well. Some other things that I want to make sure that students know is registrar deadlines. It's very important for parents, students. You can get our Pitt calendar, and this shows you everything that's taken place from our fall semester all the way to the spring semester. Make sure that you put certain dates in the calendar to make sure that you have reminders. Some of the things I like to tell students and parents is to think about add drop. Add drop is within the first 2 weeks of classes where students, if they look at those syllabi, right, and say, this is going to be too much. This class is, there's a test every week or there's too much reading. I don't think that I'm going to be able to do this and my other classes. This is a way for them to really make an appointment with their academic advisors and they're able to drop without penalty and add another class within those first 2 weeks, right? So you want to make sure you have these deadlines on your calendar, right? Once again, the syllabi deadlines, you want to have those on the calendar and make sure you have those. Turn on all Canvas notification and reminders. I think this is a really big and important one. We talked to you about downloading all these different tools, different apps to have on the calendar, on the students' phones, I should say. And when you have the alerts, it'll give students alerts. So if an assignment is due or maybe a class is switched and there is no class and it's in a different room, just these reminders or little things that will help the student to really navigate Pitt and making sure that time management is up to par and they have their to-dos together. We can go to the next slide. We can't hear you, Larissa.
Oops. Um, just something that popped up in the Q&A that I wanted to emphasize on. Somebody asked a really great clarifying question about when we say 2 to 3 hours outside of class per class, does that apply to the recitations as well? So recitations are an extension sometimes of the classroom space, and typically, in most cases, it does not introduce new course content or material, but it allows for space and time to review, to clarify, to practice concepts that were introduced during that core lecture. Now, conversely, if you have the same question about labs are usually, the work is usually done within that space and setting because it's typically like there's an equipment that's being needed or some guidance that's needed depending on the type of lab that's paired with a lecture. And so there might be some cleanup of notes, work outside of it, but not typically, I would not say necessarily to factor it in to when you're making those calculations. But when you do the syllabi review during the first week of classes, or even if the instructors sometimes will not review the syllabi, they'll say it's on Canvas. The expectation is for you to look at it and bring me any questions. So there's different schools of thought there. Um, that will be able to specifically clarify what expectations are for both portions of a specific course, should you have a lab or a recitation attached to it. Good question. All right, so next slide, Brian. Yes,
Uh,
Brian.
Thanks, Larissa. So we're just talking about some more academic resources. A lot of these may vary on department or subjects, for tutoring, but a few of them that were mentioned earlier, we do have the Writing Center. The Writing Center is good for anybody that has to write a paper just to get feedback and get some real time, editing and support with that. I know when I first wrote my first paper in college, I just thought, hey, you know what, I'm gonna sit down and do this an hour before my class starts. And I did it, and it came back with all kinds of red ink because I didn't do it correctly. So even going to the Writing Center, if you have the rubric, you can share with the Writing Center. They can kind of help you get started. Or it's like, hey, you know what, I got 2 pages, but this is supposed to be 3 pages. How can I expand this out to make this 3 pages long? So Writing Center is always a valuable resource, from the time you walk through the doors as a first year student, or if you're in your last semester here in college. So another good resource is also the Math Assistance Center. A Math Assistance Center is exactly what it sounds like. You can get support with a lot of your college math here. I know even, starting out with algebra, a lot of students like, well, I took algebra in ninth grade, I should be good. Again, sometimes with the pace of classes, sometimes you may feel a little bit behind or a little bit discombobulated with the amount of information that you're getting in. So again, the Math Assistance Center is always a good resource to get some support. Now, something that I always tell students, you don't go to the Math Assistance Center saying, I need help with my homework. You go to the Math Assistance Center saying, like, hey, I was doing my homework and there's these problems that I'm having trouble with, because then that gives them opportunity to kind of look at that work and kind of go back and kind of help support students on that. Along with that is a study lab. Sometimes it's not how you study, but it's just when you study or what you're studying. So sometimes at the study lab, they do have academic coaches there that can help students learn how the best way that they study. Again, I was a person, I was a crammer in high school. So when I came to college and I tried to do that, I realized I was like, hey, you know what? I need to be a little bit more strategic with the ways I study, with my assignments, especially with the amount of work that I'm getting in. There's also Stat Lab. That's for statistics. So a lot of students and business administration, or I guess it's the College of Business now. Within engineering, there's a lot of different subjects where they use, or a lot of different majors, I should say, that they use stat. So the Stat Lab is a good way just to kind of get that extra support with that. Business students that are within the business program, they have their own tutoring that's housed in the College of Business. So, that might be a good opportunity to get help with, say, like accounting or, finance questions that you may have, even business calc that you may have. They can do some tutoring with that as well. But there's a lot more, academic resources out there just depending on what specific major or what specific classes that you're taking out there. So just keep in mind that, there's always somebody there to support. It's a very large school, so there's always somebody there to support. And, something I always encourage students to do is to go to your professor's office hours. The best way to get what the professor is wanting from you or what they want in your work is going to the professor and asking the professor. You can't go to a tutor and say, hey, I'm not sure what my professor wants here. Go to your professor and have that conversation. Again, same thing with going to a professor. It's like, don't go there and say, hey, I'm lost in class. Go there with a number of questions that you want to ask them specifically, and they can help you. Because if you just say, hey, I need help, they don't know, hey, where do I begin? Where do you want to begin? Do we need to start at the beginning? Be a little bit more strategic with that. Academic coaching, as Natasha said, we offer that through our student success team. And again, academic coaching is just designed to kind of help you learn different ways to attack your academic rigor. It could be time management, it could be how you study, it could be the location that you study, it could be the resources within the academics. Academic coaching can help you with all those things. Mention our student success support teams. We do have SAS workshops that help students with academic things. We also have, academic coaching and support within our student success team. So come to the Student Success Hub, 217 Langley Hall. So tell your students that they come there. Just look around. If they look lost, we'll come up to them and we'll help them out. So don't forget that. There's also DRS or Disability Resource Services. So if your child had any accommodations, whether they be, academic or if they're physical accommodations, take advantage of those accommodations because that could be, extra test time. That could be taking the tests in a quiet location. That could be, having a note taker or being able to sit in the front of the room or using a recording device. There's a lot of different resources that are offered here that students don't choose. I think somebody had mentioned before, I think Larissa had mentioned before, some students say, hey, you know what? It's a new leaf. I'm going to try this in college without anything. It's just nice, like she said, to have that scaffolding up. So just in case you do need support, it's like, okay, this is right here and I can utilize this. There's also a number of different workshops and skill building offerings that we offer within our team and university wide as well. So we can help you find some of those SAS workshops that take place a lot of times in our Student Success Hub and remotely via Zoom or, what have you. But there's also other skill building opportunities you can have within our team and within the study lab. This will kind of help that holistic student kind of build themselves up. And then, with the experiential learning, a lot of people come in here with a plan, and sometimes that plan doesn't always work out to fruition. So, with experiential learning, that could be something like, hey, you know what, I really want to get into the medical field, but, I don't know if this is quite for me. So doing experiential learning where you're out in the field, hands-on, doing co-ops or doing internships, you may find out, hey, you know what, I'm a little bit queasy about blood. I like to stay behind the desk and do things a little bit more administratively within the healthcare field. So I don't necessarily need to do pre-med. But experiential learning is an opportunity for students to kind of find out what it is that they do like and what those things are that they don't like. Because like a person like myself, I did one internship and it was in my senior year. So when I got to my senior year, I just assumed for my major, this is the only thing that I can do. And come to find out, there's a whole world of things that I can do with my major. So, it is just a matter of just utilizing these resources and knowing that you're supported when you're here. And just keep in mind too, always talk to your faculty, your advisors, your student support team. That's going to be listed on that on the Navigate 360. Those are going to be your people that are going to help support you throughout your time here at Pitt. So take advantage of those people and recognize and know who those people are, learn who those people are.
Excellent. And we did cover this a little bit, but I just wanted to put a finer point on something that Brian mentioned, which is exploratory advising. One thing that our office particular does, as you may have already been noticing, there are so many resources at the University of Pittsburgh. And so the most important thing, and if you want to take away one really important thing, is that all the student needs to do is reach out. Yes, we have systems in place that we have early detection, and we will oftentimes be doing some intervention and outreach, and Natasha will speak to that here in a minute. But the student only has to reach out, or you could also reach out and let us know if there's something that we need to be concerned about or have questions about availability. But there is also a space within this academic coaching for exploratory and transitional advising. We see it happen for one reason or another. A student may get to college and they lived their entire high school life saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be this. And then they get there and they realize, oh, this isn't what I expected. Um, we're here for them. We have a system set up in which we support the student, make sure that they get what they need. If they don't know what they want to transition to, we have a system for that. We have people for that. In fact, the three of us are amongst the people for that, along with academic advisors in the schools. And so we've got their back in order to allow them to still be successful at the University of Pittsburgh with a capital P, even if plans change. And so that's something that I know a lot of students maybe come in nervous about. Are they're gonna find their way? Maybe I like this major, maybe I don't. Maybe they're truly exploratory. We've got people for that. And so just making sure that that the students can reach out at any time and will be supported in those spaces and places if they are currently experiencing that, or if they should experience it, they may want to make a change in the future. But that also applies to what I kind of have named loosely credential stacking, right? In addition to a major, what the student will get their baccalaureate degree in, there are so many opportunities at the University of Pittsburgh for minors, certificates, distinctions. So there's lots and lots and lots to learn about. Now, your first semester student does not necessarily have to worry about those because they have lots of time. But those are conversations that they should be talking to their advisors about often. So every semester when they meet with their academic advisor and their program advisors or resource advisors, we have a whole network system just making sure that those plans are firmly at hand. I say the same thing with if a student really has an interest in studying abroad. There are very few, if any, majors that don't allow for some room for that, but it is very, very important to be planful so that you're making sure you're still meeting course sequencing and hitting all the benchmarkers and milestones for your majors. But even one of our more complicated curricula that might be, let's put computer science, computer engineering, two different schools. It's probably some of our more complex curriculum to navigate. I've even seen engineers. We actually have a peer success guide that works in our office that has done 2 semesters abroad as an engineering major. And so just having that idea out there to the people who support you early allows for way more room for that to happen seamlessly. Natasha.
Yeah, so we want to talk to you a little bit about academic intervention and outreach, right? So this is what Larissa and I, and also Brian, we really handle very well. So outreach, right? These are initiatives that we work with students to make sure that we're reducing barriers, empowering persistence and retention. Meaning when a student comes to terms, if they are having any issues, things of that nature, and they're like, who do we seek to? I need assistance with, tutoring, or I just cannot get myself together. I am procrastinating, right? We are the go-to people, academic coaches, right? We are here to support those students in a variety of different things. What I normally call us is like the jack of all trades, right? We may not know everything, but we're here as a resource, and then we will point your student to anywhere that they may need other assistance if we are not able to help them. But what we want to do is provide that first step, right? That first intervention to make sure that students are succeeding at Pitt, that if they have any questions, concerns, they can come to us, right? And then if there's additional support that they need on campus, we work very well with everyone on our campuses to make sure that we are making sure that we funnel students to them, right? As Brian stated in the past, like we have all these resources on campus, right? But students sometimes don't know how to get there, right? So if they come to us and they need assistance with any of these different barriers, we will point them in the right direction and or we will help them ourselves, right? And then academic intervention is something that we do here at Pitt to make sure that we are tackling the issue before it becomes a severe issue, such as early progress reports. So those are things that are taking place where professors will allow us to identify students who are maybe struggling in a course or have concerns, right? That they're not doing so well. There's that early progress reports that they'll allow us to tackle, and there's like an alert. we will reach out to the students to work with those students and say, here's some concerns, here's some academic support. We're here to coach you. And if they need like tutoring or anything of that nature, we will point them in the right directions. Midterm grades, some professors will submit those midterm grades to students so they know where they're standing, right? Academic review and academic standing. This is something that we're working really hard within our office about. You could review that on if you go to pitt.edu. Some things are changing. However, we have everything listed. It goes back again to the policies, right? Knowing exactly what Pitt policies are for grading, academic standing, academic reviews. I know we didn't touch base on this here, but just like in regards to like what are the expectations, right? You can look those up as well. And just a little bit about who we are as UUA, we are here to coordinate intentional student centered academic interventions and outreach efforts and supports the students at pivotal moments in their academic journey. So, as Larissa stated, right, we are here to support the students, right? Things are going to be different. Students are going from high school to college, right? That intense difference of demand is going to be a little bit different, right? It's going to be challenging, right? Because college is challenging, but we are here to support them, right? They are not alone, but they have to seek, support. And that's why we want to let you guys know, make sure your students know who we are. So if there is a time that they need extra support, extra attention, make sure they know how to reach us. Anything else, Larissa?
Just one last opportunity for students to connect with us. So we'd be remiss if we didn't mention our academic series. Natasha, did you want to say a little bit about that at the time we have left?
Yeah, so student academic success series, which we call it SAS, is a couple of workshops that we think that students could utilize while they're here, right? These are, once again, free programs, different things of that nature. The majority of them are via Zoom. So if they are interested in learning more about a particular topic, each semester we have a variety of different ones. So as you can see here, we have some such as, I'll just go through a few, but you can find this on our website as well. But a few that I'll note is, how to communicate with your faculty and advocate for yourself. This is a really big one, especially for first year students, incoming students. How can I write that first email to a professor if I have questions or concerns, right? We'll teach you how to do that. How can you work effectively in group projects, right? These are things that students might want to know. They could just click on a QR code. They can go to our website and just sign up. We do have some things, if your student is a first gen student and they want to know about mentoring programs and things of that nature, we have a workshop on that. We have more workshops on experiential learning and how to, navigate that in regards to, if I wanted to study abroad, internship opportunities, academic standing, and also how do I get started in undergraduate research. So anything you could think of that is pertaining to students, right? We mix these up each semester. So fall is going to be different than the spring, but these are workshops to assist your students in regards to like learning and digging more into like how to become that holistic student.
Well, we are right at time. We have been fielding some questions in the Q&A. If you didn't get a chance to look at the Q&A, maybe you had the same question. We also put our contact information for our email if you had questions. This is the main website that you would want to look at also. But I always like to end with this, whether it's students or families, let's do this. Particularly breaking down the semantics of that sentence, right? We are a team. Do means yes, you have to take action. And this, we are focused. So we're here for those students. Again, all they need to do is reach out. There's lots of ways that referrals can be made to us via different systems, but we certainly want to make sure that you as parents and families know what the resources are. So when the students may call home and say, I'm just confused on where to start. Student Success Hub is the place to start. We are kind of the most collaborative and centralized space for supporting those students. And if we don't specifically do that, we will make sure that we have a warm handoff to get your students to those resources that they need to do so. I can hang out for a little bit regarding any questions that may pop up in the Q&A. And to answer others' questions, this will be posted on the Student Affairs YouTube page, and students will have access to a very similar workshop during Welcome Week where they will get this information as well. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Yes, thank you very much. Reach out if you have any questions or concerns.
Thanks, everybody.